Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive into global news.
Hmm.
Today we're using Al Jazeera's news feed from March 11, 2025
Okay.
as our guide, and just glancing at it, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, looks like it.
I mean, you've got the Russia-Ukraine war still going strong.
Really? Still.
Yeah, day 1111 to be exact.
Oh, wow.
And then there's a general election happening in Greenland.
Huh. Interesting.
And get this, Donald Trump is rumored to be interested in acquiring the island.
Wait, what? Seriously?
Yeah, I know, right? It sounds crazy.
That's wild.
And on top of that, you've got a humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza.
Oh, no, that's awful.
Yeah, the UNRWA chief is warning of deepening hunger due to Israel's blockade.
Ah, that's terrible.
And to make matters worse, the Houthis are threatening attacks in the Red Sea.
So much going on.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is.
So yeah, how do we even begin to make sense of all this?
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? I mean, how do we stay informed about what's happening in the world
Right.
without getting completely overwhelmed by it all?
It's exactly.
I think that's what we're here for today.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Kind of break it down,
Yeah.
connect the dots and try to see the bigger picture.
I like that makes sense of the chaos.
Exactly.
So should we start with the Russia-Ukraine war?
Sure, let's do that.
Okay, so the newsfeed mentions that Ukraine has launched a drone attack on Moscow.
Mm.
And this is happening while ceasefire talks with the U.S. are ongoing.
Wow, that's a bold move.
It is, right? I mean, what do you think that means?
Well, it makes you wonder what their strategy is.
Right.
Is it a show of strength? Are they trying to gain leverage in the negotiations?
Or maybe a little bit of both.
Maybe it's a way to, kind of remind everyone that they're not backing down.
Yeah, they're still in the fight.
Exactly, and they're willing to take risks.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to an already complicated situation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the stakes are incredibly high right now.
Yeah, for everyone involved.
For both sides.
For the whole world, really.
Yeah, you've got Russia feeling the pressure of the sanctions.
Right.
And then you've got Ukraine desperate for peace, but unwilling to, just give up their territory.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in.
It really is. And any misstep could have,
It's huge.
huge
Yes.
consequences.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of uncertainty there.
Definitely.
Okay, well, let's move on to something a little bit different. How about Greenland?
Okay.
So there's a general election happening there.
Right.
And it seems like there's this growing movement for independence.
Interesting.
And then you've got this whole thing with Donald Trump.
Yeah. What is up with that?
I know, right? It seems like he's still interested in acquiring the island.
I mean, can you imagine the geopolitical implications if that actually happened?
It would be huge, right? Like completely change the balance of power in the Arctic.
Exactly. And you know who else would be paying attention?
Oh.
Russia and China.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They wouldn't just sit back and watch that happen.
No, they wouldn't?
It would be a
don't.
major shift in global politics.
Yeah. It's mind-boggling to think about.
It really is.
Okay, well, let's switch gears again and talk about something a bit more serious.
Okay.
This situation in Gaza.
Right.
So the UNRWA chief is warning about deepening hunger there because of Israel's blockade, which is approaching 10 days now.
Oh, wow.
And the news feed is saying that there's no food or medicine or even water getting through.
Oh, that's just awful.
It is. And to add to the tension,
Yeah.
the Houthis are threatening attacks in the Red Sea.
Oh, man, the Houthis.
Yeah, so maybe you could give us a little background on who they are and how they fit into all this.
Sure. So the Houthis are they're a rebel group based in Yemen,
Okay.
and they've been fighting a civil war there for years now.
Right.
And they're backed by Iran.
Oh, okay.
And they're opposed to the Saudi-backed government in Yemen.
Right.
So their involvement in the situation adds a whole other dimension to the conflict. It brings in this regional element,
Right.
and it raises the possibility of a much wider escalation.
Yeah. That's a scary thought.
It is because, I mean, the situation in Gaza is already dire, and adding external actors like the Houthis into the mix,
Right.
it just makes everything even more volatile.
Definitely.
It's like a powder keg waiting to explode.
Yeah, it really does feel that way.
And we have to remember that these aren't, just abstract geopolitical events.
Right.
There are real people caught in the middle of this,
Absolutely.
facing unimaginable hardships.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that when you're reading the headlines.
It is.
You get caught up in the political maneuvering and the strategic analysis.
Right.
But at the end of the day,
Yeah,
there are real human lives at stake.
absolutely. And I think it's important to keep that in mind.
I agree.
So, yeah, I mean, looking at all this, I'm
Mhm.
starting to see some interesting patterns emerging.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, for one thing, it seems like traditional power structures are being challenged.
Okay.
I mean, you've got China weathering Trump's trade war tactics.
Huh. And then you've got the ICC trying to hold Duterte accountable.
Right.
And on top of that, the Dalai Lama is saying his successor will be born in the free world.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
It is, right?
Yeah, so what do you make of it all?
Well, it seems to me that the world is becoming more multipolar.
Multipolar.
Yeah, instead of having one dominant superpower,
Right.
you've got multiple centers of power emerging.
Okay, I see.
And that's going to lead to all sorts of new challenges and opportunities.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a really fascinating time to be following global events.
I agree. It's like we're witnessing a major shift in the world order.
Exactly.
And it's happening right before our eyes.
Right now.
That's wild.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground already.
Yeah, we have.
But before we move on, I want to touch on something that caught my eye in the news feed.
Okay.
It's about Lewis Hamilton.
Oh, yeah. What about him?
Well, apparently he's moving to Ferrari for the upcoming F1 season.
What? Really?
Yeah, I know, right? It's huge news. That's going to shake things up.
It is, right. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how he performs with the new team.
Totally. And with young drivers like Norris coming up,
Yeah.
it's going to be a really exciting season.
I can't wait.
Me neither.
Okay, but now back to some more serious news.
Okay.
There's a story here about an activist named Mahmoud Khalil.
Yeah, what about him?
Well, he was arrested in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
And the news feed doesn't give a lot of details, but it mentions accusations of anti-Semitism.
That's a serious charge.
It is, and it raises all sorts of questions about freedom of speech and the potential misuse of these kinds of accusations.
Yeah, to silence dissent or criticism.
Exactly, and that's something we need to be very careful about.
Absolutely.
And it's a slippery slope.
It is.
Okay, so wow, we've already covered so much.
I know, right? It's amazing how much can happen in just one day.
It really is, and we're just scratching the surface here.
Just a glimpse into the complexity of the world.
It makes you realize how important it is to stay informed.
It does, but it also makes you wonder, how do we make sense of it all?
That's a great question, and maybe one we can explore further in our next segment.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay, so stay tuned, everyone.
We'll be right back.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a real challenge, right? Staying informed, but not letting it overwhelm you.
Yeah, so how do we do it?
Right.
How do we navigate this constant flow of information?
Well, one thing I always tell people is to diversify your news sources.
Okay.
Don't just rely on one outlet or one perspective.
So, don't just watch one news channel.
Exactly.
Or read one newspaper.
Right.
Okay.
Try to get your news from a variety of different sources.
So, different perspectives, different countries?
Yeah, exactly. Different political leanings, even.
Okay, so kind of like getting a second opinion from a doctor.
Yeah, exactly. You want to make sure you're getting the full picture.
Okay, that makes sense.
And another thing to pay attention to is the language being used.
The language.
Yeah, is it inflammatory? Is it sensationalized? Are they trying to manipulate your emotions?
Right.
Or are they presenting the facts in a clear and objective way?
So look for evidence-based reporting.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to fact-check things.
Especially on social media.
Oh, especially on social media.
It's like a minefield of misinformation out there.
It really is. You have to be so careful.
So how do we do that? How do we spot fake news?
Well, one thing to watch out for is headlines that are designed to trigger strong emotional reactions.
Okay.
Those ones that make you angry or scared or outraged?
Right.
Those are often the ones that go viral.
Even if they're not true.
Exactly.
So always check the source.
Always check the source.
Okay.
Is it a reputable news organization? Is it a credible expert?
Or is it just some random person on Twitter?
Right.
Okay, good advice.
And, there are a lot of great resources out there to help you fact-check things.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, there are websites like Snopes and PolitiFact, and there are also fact-checking organizations that are affiliated with news outlets.
So we don't have to just take things at face value.
Exactly. Do your own research. Be skeptical.
Be a critical thinker.
Exactly.
I like that.
It's like being a detective.
Yeah, you're investigating the news.
You're not just passively consuming it.
You're actively engaging with it.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about diversifying our sources and fact-checking.
Right.
But what about the bigger picture?
What do you mean?
Well, we were talking earlier about this idea of a multipolar world.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems like a lot of these news stories are pointing in that direction.
They are, aren't they?
Yeah, like China's economic resilience,
Okay.
the ICC trying to hold Duterte accountable,
Yeah.
the Dalai Lama's statement about his successor.
It's like the world is shifting.
Yeah, it's like the old power structures are breaking down.
Exactly, and new ones are emerging.
So what does that mean for us? What does that mean for the future?
Well, I think it means we're going to see more competition,
Okay.
more instability,
Right.
more uncertainty.
But it doesn't sound so good.
Well, it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just
Sure.
different.
Yeah.
It's a new reality that we have to adapt to.
So how do we do that?
Well, I think the first step is to understand what's happening,
Okay.
to see the world as it is not as we want it to be.
Right.
We need to be realistic about the challenges we face.
And the opportunities.
Exactly.
So it's about being informed, but also being adaptable.
Yeah, and being willing to challenge our own assumptions.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, because the world is changing fast,
It is.
and we need to be able to change with it.
I agree.
So yeah, I think that's the key takeaway here.
To be adaptable.
To be adaptable, to be informed.
And to be engaged.
Exactly.
I like that.
So what do you think? Are you ready for the challenge?
I think so. I mean, it's a lot to take in.
It is.
But it's also exciting in a way.
It is exciting.
It's like we're living through history.
We really are.
And who knows what the future holds?
Nobody knows, but it's going to be interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, before we wrap things up,
Yeah.
I want to touch on something you said earlier
Okay.
about the importance of individual action.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's easy to feel powerless when you're faced with all these global problems.
It is. Right.
Yeah, like what can one person do?
Well, I think a lot, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, we might not be world leaders or policymakers,
Right.
but we are citizens.
Okay.
And we have a responsibility to stay informed, to hold our leaders accountable,
Right.
and to advocate for the changes we want to see.
So it's about more than just staying informed.
Exactly.
It's about using that knowledge to make a difference,
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
but only if we use it.
Exactly.
All right.
So yeah, don't underestimate the power of your own voice
Okay.
and your own actions.
Even small things can make a difference.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's a great reminder.
Yeah, I hope so.
So I guess that brings us to the end of this part of our deep dive,
Yeah, it does.
but we're not done yet.
No, not yet.
We've got one more segment to go.
Right.
So stay tuned, everyone.
We'll be right back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one key takeaway you'd like to leave our listeners with?
That's a good question. You know, I think the most important thing is to remember that the world is complex.
Yeah.
It's interconnected, and our understanding of it is constantly evolving.
Right, like what we think we know today
Yeah,
might change tomorrow.
exactly. So we need to be open to new information,
Right.
be willing to challenge our assumptions.
And be humble.
Yeah, be humble, definitely.
You know, because none of us has all the answers.
That's true. And I think it's also crucial to remember the human element in all of this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Behind every headline,
Right.
every
As
statistic,
every political decision.
there are real people whose lives are being affected.
Real people with families and hopes and dreams.
It's easy to forget that sometimes.
It is, you know, we get caught up in the analysis
Yeah.
and the debates,
Yeah.
and we lose sight of the human cost.
So as we continue to engage with the news and explore different perspectives,
All right.
let's try to do it with empathy,
Yeah.
with compassion.
And with a sense of responsibility.
I love
It's
that.
not just about being informed.
It's about being human.
Exactly.
Well said. Well, this has been quite a journey,
It has, hasn't it?
a whirlwind of information and insights.
I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. And I hope our listeners feel the same way.
I hope so too.
So to everyone out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into global news.
Thanks, everyone.
Remember, staying informed is just the first step.
Right.
The real challenge is to use that knowledge to make a positive impact on the world around you.
And never underestimate the power of your own voice and actions.
Even small things can make a difference.
Yeah, they really can.
So until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep exploring the world with an open mind.
And an open heart.
And an open heart. Thanks for listening, everyone.